boy back again with another video, man. Black Ops. Game. Borderlands 4, bro. Borderlands 4 Ordinance system. I want to hear a little bit about it. Not really. It was a couple of days ago. I'm watching the Buffaloes and Ravens game right now. So what? You get it Monday. 30 clean minutes of gameplay. So if y'all want to go check that out, it's already up on the channel. By the time y'all get this, it'll be somewhere like Wednesday. But a little bit more. Shout out to Loot Unlocked. You know what I'm saying? Let's watch. Make sure you stop with
Continuing my video series going over all of the new systems or all of the big system changes coming to Borderlands 4, we have one of the most interesting and exciting, and that's the change to an ordnance system in Borderlands 4. Now, this is actually giving us a new gear slot called Ordinance, and in the Ordnance slot, you'll have either a grenade mod or any other heavy weapon. So things like rocket launchers, miniguns, blade weapons, all of those type of heavier weapons and grenade mods are going to share the same slot. You'll be able to have one equipped at a time like other gear pieces, but instead of previous Borderlands games where all of those different type of weapons including grenades would have ammo, now they're on a cooldown system. So for grenades specifically, you will have charges on a cooldown, and it seems like you can get over 7 charges with some of the legendary grenade mods. And for the heavy weapons, they're also on a cooldown, but the cooldown is kind of just refreshing their ammo to where you can use it again, and then it has an ammo count within that cooldown. So let's say you have a minigun that has like 100 rounds in it. The cooldown is refreshing those 100 rounds, and when the cooldown is up and you can use it again, you'll have those 100 rounds to play with. So this is a massive change to both grenade mods and heavy weapons, but one of the main reasons they changed to this ordnance system is to be able to keep these weapon types more balanced and specifically much stronger, because when you go back to a lot of Borderlands games, grenades either became just for healing or applying debuffs or were just completely useless if you weren't a full grenade build. But in Borderlands 4, even if you're not an ordnance build, ordnance should still be quite strong for you no matter what. Now, another really big change is that Ordnance is now a new damage type that can be scaled through a ton of different ways, through different gear slots, and more specifically through different Vault Hunters skill trees. So specifically, someone like Rafa has a ton of boosts to Ordnance.
He got a whole infinite grenade kit. That's definitely gonna be one of my builds I'm gonna make for sure. So they need to. What they need to do is, I'm not gonna lie, they need to make I don't know if it was in 3, from my memory, I don't remember, but one thing they definitely need to do is create a how can I say it? Oh yeah, load up for classes. Yeah, load up. So like, say I want to go, because for me, I'm going A mine. Say if I want 3 different types of builds, I should be able to have 3 different types of builds and click something to make me go to this build, this build, this build. So I don't gotta recreate it every time. So that infinite grenade build on rifle, that's really crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Damage. You also have a bunch of different effects, like dealing ordnance damage could reduce your action skill cooldown, or dealing ordnance damage could give you a damage buff to your weapons, or you could just have ordnance damage increases specifically, or you could have a massive buff to ordnance damage, or getting ordnance damage to proc additional effects while in your action skill. So there's so many different ways to now scale ordnance and create builds specifically around your ordnance slot. There are absolutely going to be a bunch of builds, probably at least one for every Vault Hunter, where you can do a full ordnance build. And this slot also has a lot of variation in the different types, specifically between grenades and heavy weapons, because we already went over the differences in how their cooldowns work with a charge system or an ammo system on a cooldown. But grenades also only deal ordnance damage, but heavy weapons count as both a weapon and ordnance damage. So heavy weapons can be scaled in different ways, and it also seems that grenades and heavy weapons are rolled a bit differently when it comes to the actual part rolls you can get on those, because as I went over in one of my previous videos, there is now the licensed parts system in Borderlands 4, and both heavy weapons and grenades are going to be...
What's crazy? Out of all the news, this is like one of the news I forgot about this game, that we can do this. I forgot. I ain't gonna lie.
using that system in a similar way to weapons, just with a few additional factors that kind of modify how they're going to be rolling. Now, I will say that it seems we have a lot less information on heavy weapons specifically. We know they're going to have different part rolls than like normal weapons, but they're also going to have different part rolls than grenades. And to my knowledge, heavy weapons just kind of have random part rolling, just like weapons do, just with a different set of part rolls, but grenades actually roll in a bit of a more specified way. And to keep this a bit more simple, that essentially means that grenades will roll different parts in kind of set slots. So one of the more important ones is a grenade's trigger, which every grenade will roll. Green grenades only roll with the trigger. Blue grenades roll with the trigger plus 2 possible parts. Purple would roll with the trigger plus 3 possible parts. And then a legendary would roll with its legendary effect, a trigger, and 2 possible parts. Now, there's only a handful of different triggers, and these are essentially how the grenade works, what the grenade is actually going to be. So for instance, you could have a TDR trigger where it essentially turns your grenade into like thrown C4. You throw it and then remotely detonate it. A Vladoff trigger would make your grenades explode on impact, and a Ripper grenade would teleport your grenade to that destination. Now, because of how the parts rolling in Borderlands 4 works, you could still get like a purple grenade with any of these different triggers on that grenade. That's just a part that every grenade will have. That determines how the grenade is actually going to be working. And then you have the different part rolls, and this is split up between different roles, which are essentially payloads, augments, and perks. And to try to keep this a bit more simple, those are essentially just different roles that the weapon can have, and it's essentially a bunch of different perks just in a separate category. So like a payload part on a grenade would almost always be something that gives you a really big damage increasing output. So the divider payload would spawn a second grenade while your grenade is in mid-flight or being thrown, and a lingering payload would spawn an elemental puddle wherever that grenade landed or exploded. An augment would be another effect that will usually massively increase the power of that grenade, but not necessarily something that will just increase the damage or spawn more grenades or something like a payload would be. So you could have the apex augment where each grenade also explodes at the apex of each bounce, or the duration augment, which increases the duration of the lingering effect. So the augments are still going to be pretty powerful, but they kind of change how the payload works. And then you will also have a perk roll, which is essentially just some like stat increase. Like you could get 8% life steal, you could get knockback force increase, you could get more critical damage, you could get a damage radius increase. So perks are more stat increases or stat additions to that grenade roll. So to wrap that up a bit, the heavy weapons in the ordnance slots seem to roll more like weapons, which makes sense because they also scale off of weapon damage. They're just randomly rolling between a different set of parts specific to heavy weapons, and grenades only deal ordnance damage and scale off of ordnance damage, but grenades just have more categorized rolls determining all the different parts that can actually be on the grenade. Now, a big thing to note with grenade mods specifically is that once you get up to the legendary rarity, one of your rolls is obviously going to be taken up by that legendary unique power. So one of the other kind of set rolls that you get on normal grenade mods has to be removed. And it seems that legendary grenade mods don't come with the augment roll. So you have the payload roll, then you have the augment that in some way buffs up that payload. Then you have the trigger and perk rolls. It seems that the augment roll is the one that does not roll on legendary mods. So you're still getting the payload, you're still getting the perk roll, which is just a stat increase, and you're still getting the trigger that determines how the grenade works, but you're not getting the payload augment. And because there's seemingly so little information on heavy weapons so far, especially when it comes to how they're specifically rolling, I don't know if heavy weapons have this more set rolls they can have like grenades do. My assumption is that because heavy weapons also scale off of weapon damage, that they roll more like weapons, where they can essentially have randomized rolls, and none of the different slots
I remember watching that gameplay. Four different Vault Hunters, all each of them. They had each. How can I say this? I remember Vex had the one with the Vex had the one. This is all I watched it from day into too. Like I said, Monday, but that's tomorrow. You feel me? Y'all be getting this around Wednesday. Y'all want to go watch that? Go watch it. You feel me? Vex had she had a little gun. It was like a laser beam. and they gave out radiation. And it also exploded, which spreads the radiation. Shit like that. That's how I'm understanding it, because I actually seen it.
Set to different things. And keep in mind that like every other gear slot in Borderlands 4, the Ordnance slot can also have legendary items. So you can get legendary heavy weapons, you can get legendary grenade mods, and those are all going to have their unique legendary effect. Whether you're using heavy weapons or you're using grenade mods, there's going to be a ridiculous amount of roll combinations you can get, and you can go farm up different legendaries that will have their specific legendary power, just giving a ridiculous amount of combinations and things to go farm for just specifically this gear slot. And because there's so many different ways to buff up and build into different Ordnance effects, there's absolutely going to be a ton of Ordnance build on the launch of Borderlands 4 for pretty much every Vault Hunter. But that's all I want to go over.
I already got my game pre-ordered, man, so it's gonna be this, and then after this, what? Black Ops 7, bro. Oh no. Battlefield was to come out. Yeah, I think Brady getting that, so I'll get that off of him. And then, yeah, Black Ops 7, bro. I'm ready, bro. A lot of games at the end of the year. You need to tell me how y'all feel about that. Ordnance, guns, you know what I'm saying, grenades, you know what I'm saying? So the infinite grenade build, like I was talking about, I do already got a video on that. Just check the playlist, bro. It's up on that. But I'm ready for that. I ain't gonna lie, I'm ready for that. But nobody else got like share me. Yeah.